What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. Today is season 10, episode 4. And the cool thing about this show is I get to talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different places all over the world, including Europe, including Australia. Now we're in my backyard in Maryland with Brad Cox. Brad, thanks for hanging out, man. This is cool. We've been kind of meaning to chat for a while.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. It's nice because there are some times where there's plenty of people like that I'd want to talk to in this state. And then you know how it is, man. You book out your shows and stuff, and then it's like the end of that season, and then you forget, and then you got to get back to it and get into the headspace. But this is great. And I guess we could have done this in the same room, but you know, it's nice to be home. It's nice to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Why
So
not?
did you say season 10?
Season 10.
Wow. So when did you start this?
In August of 2020. So I generally do the first 2 or 3 seasons. I was doing 2 a week because I sent messages to people and I was like not thinking anyone would get back to me. Because I sent messages to all these like super high level musicians who I admire. Every single one of them said yes. So I was like, oh crap.
Shoot on the moon, but you got right to the stars.
Well, you know, it's funny. I'm very blessed with knowing some pretty awesome people in the industry already.
Okay.
And so the first dude I had on was Joey Landreth, and he's like a pretty big deal in the guitar community. Lots of people love him. And once people saw I had him, then they were like, "Oh, you must be not crazy and and hard to talk to." So I think it just kind of like spun from there. And but yeah, I was like doing 2 a week, man. I was doing like Tuesday nights, Saturday mornings, Tuesday nights, Saturday mornings.
It's addicting till you hit the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's still fun. I still enjoy it, and I still enjoy doing the research. I love talking to people about music.
Yeah.
But it does, like, after a while, it's like, okay, I got to figure out how can I freshen it up? How can I change it up this season? What else can I do? And I'm sure you know about this with what you do with your podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
But regardless, it's fun. Every week, it's like a highlight of my week to chat with people about music, even though my day gig is the same kind of thing. I'm talking to people about music. But dude, I always ask this, what is your earliest musical memory?
Oh God. Well, I mean, not to give away my age, but that's going way back. I would say, my father, he used to watch Simon and Garfunkel live at Central Park almost every single morning.
Really?
And I have this core memory of sitting there eating Cocoa Puffs every single morning, watching Mrs. Robinson or whatever was on the screen. And it was just something about the way he loved it that made me love it. And I still love the songs. I mean, they're always going to be great songs, but there was a little bit of connective tissue with him being, he wanted to play music too. He ended up being a police officer and that kind of thing. But that was like that connecting piece with him and I.
Okay. Did he play at all? Did he play guitar at all or anything?
He does. He played in this thing called the Heat Band. So the Heat Band would go around to different schools and they would sing songs to encourage people to, not commit crime, to stay off drugs and that kind of thing. So he had his own little trading cards that said the Heat Band. And so,
that's awesome.
Yeah, he played, but he didn't do it like to the degree like I'm doing it or anything like that, where he's like writing his own songs, going out and performing. So, but he's a musician at heart.
Right. So you grew up with music in the house, like predominantly. Was it predominantly from your dad?
Yeah, I pretty much came from him. My mom was really into music too, but they were separated. So it was night and day. He was into things like the Beatles as where she would be into the Stones. Like, okay. He was more, it was just a little bit more, best way to put it would be conservative. And she was a little bit more of the wild child.
Okay.
So somewhere in the middle though is me, right? So
yeah. Well, yeah, because you have both of those worlds, right? I mean, well, tell me a little bit about that, because like I find it interesting because I did not grow up in a house that was, I don't know, pushing music on me at all, or like exposing me to stuff. Like my parents listened to music, and my dad would listen to the Eagles a lot, but I'm not a fan of the Eagles. I feel like the Big Lebowski in that sense. I do not like the Eagles. And it's not because of the association with my dad. My dad passed away 2 years ago, but like he, you know, he was a fan of music and he enjoyed music, but the stuff that he was kind of more close to is not something I would find in my CD collection, really. So tell me a little bit about like growing up around that stuff, because what other records were on?
So that was the thing. And so I ran away to Hollywood when I was like 17 and a half years old, you know. And the reason I did was because I grew up in a very religious household and I didn't really relate outside of Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles, that kind of thing, with a lot of what was going on in the home. I was really drawn to rock and roll music and the kind of stuff that my mom was kind of giving me when I had visitation. So there was a lot of Christian rock in the house, that kind of thing. And that never really made sense to me just on its face. Like, there's a lot of great Christian rock bands, but the kind of stuff I'm referring to is like Striper, where it's like almost like glam Christian rock. It just, you know, so it didn't really resonate with me. And I was a young kid who was rebellious, just full of piss and vinegar. And it just at that age didn't make sense to me. And there weren't really a lot of really great Christian rock bands back then. There was these really heavy bands like The Crucified and Believer and Tourniquet and like these really cool alternatives, but they weren't like the bands I was into. I was into like Led Zeppelin and Guns N' Roses and Faith No More and stuff like that. And it was either like kind of this cheeky, cheesy kind of version of rock and roll, which would be like kind of Striper, that kind of thing, or Bride, even though Bride was okay, I guess. Or it was just like over the top. So I gravitated more towards, I guess, secular music. And I got to a point where I just was like, you know what? I'm going to see what's out there. I'm going to go to Los Angeles and I'm going to try to do the thing. And so that's how the story kind of starts to unfold.
Okay. When did you first find stuff like Zeppelin and like any of the classic rock stuff we know that we grew up around? Like what age were you when that stuff was popping?
So there was a service a long time ago called Columbia House, if you remember Columbia House. And they basically had this thing where like, if they sent you the package and you opened it, then you owned it. That was it. And so my curiosity would always kind of get the best of me. And I remember opening, it was Zeppelin 3. And I was probably 9-10 years old. I was pretty young. At the time, I think I had Cinderella's Night Songs, and that was like, you know, the forbidden tape, you know. And I popped it in, and it was Immigrant Song kicks in, and it was just like, what is this? This is amazing. And it kind of knocked my socks off because like Cinderella was cool, but they didn't seem to have the same depth as Zeppelin. Like Zeppelin has like a certain mystique around them, as where Cinderella was just like, we're just here for the drugs and the women, man. and that's what we're writing about. So I liked it, but I really liked Zeppelin. And that was one of those first cassettes that really blew me away. And I was very much in my formative years.
Okay. What do you think like trapped you about it? So like when you hear something like Immigrant Song, right? So like for me, as a guitarist, you would think that I immediately gravitate to listen to a guitar, right? I don't. I listen to drums first and foremost. Like I'm always about groove. Like what was it for you hearing something like Immigrant Song that made you be like, whoa, this is like world changing?
It was Robert Plant.
Okay.
It was that howl. And I'm always gravitated towards things that seem special or that like it doesn't seem like everybody can do, and then trying to figure out like, can I do that or can I push myself to do that? Even like when the band started doing cover songs, I didn't want to do Wonderwall. I wanted to do Master of Puppets or like things that people just don't do, or Welcome to the Jungle, or just things that would have that wow effect. And I think Zeppelin had that because they were very experimental. You never knew from song to song, especially on Zeppelin 3, what you were getting. And like with Cinderella's Night Songs, to go back to that, like every single song is like AC/DC. Like you know what you're getting. Here it comes. Nothing wrong with it, but yeah, I would say that would be it.
Okay, so you like the diversity of the musical breadth that Zeppelin offers. Like if you listen to something like Brownie or Stomp and then you listen to Immigrant Song, it's like, oh wow, okay, that's refreshing. That's what attracts you.
Yeah, well, that fascinated me, and then of course going back to kind of like the religious upbringing, we would be at these camps, and they would talk about how like Jimmy Page would use Ouija boards to like conjure lyrics and things like that, and I'm like, and they're like, this is satanic and this is awesome or awful, and I'm thinking, no, this is kind of cool. Like, what is this is mysterious and just so out there. So, that was a Freudian slip, I guess, but it just fascinated me because it just seemed like Egypt. Like it was just like there's something about this that I just don't understand. And I want to understand it. And no matter how much you listen to it, it just got more intriguing.
Right. Totally, dude. All right. So I think we're pretty close in age, ish. I mean, I'm 45. So,
Well, I'm 47. So
yeah. So we grew up in the same era. And I feel like that 80s hair metal thing, like I skipped right over that. I didn't trip and fall into that at all. Like Guns N' Roses is foreign to me. I'll tell you right now, I don't own any Guns N' Roses records. I never listened all the way through Appetite for Destruction. I have no interest in it because I feel like I just like jumped straight over that because I was listening to whatever my older siblings were listening to in the house,
Right.
which was not that. It was like Michael Jackson's Thriller, or you know what I mean? So for you, first of all, I did not know about this whole like, super religious upbringing, which made you rebel. We can get into some of that because like I have an interesting kind of parallel there. But I would say during that time in the 80s when we were kind of in those formative years, like before grunge hit.
Yeah.
Which is what really like threw me for a loop, which I was like, that was my Zeppelin at the time.
Right.
But for you, for what you do now, like when did guitar enter into that world? Like what age were you at that point?
So guitar I was about 8 years old. And it's funny because I started taking lessons with Vince Corson at Musicland.
Me too, man. I took it.
All right. So there it is. And my dad, and it was over at Forest Hill, actually. So that's when they had the location over there where the Village Video ended up going into. I think it was Village Video. Anyway, he taught me from about 8 years old, and he still looks the same now, which is weird. He taught me from 8 years old till I was a senior in high school, basically. And so all of my early music was guitar pieces. As a matter of fact, like I started fronting a band because these were my songs and I didn't really want anybody else singing them, even though I, at the time, couldn't sing them really great. I still didn't want anybody else doing it. But it got to the point where people like, I don't know, there was like a disassociation where they're like, oh, you play the guitar too? I'm like, no, I predominantly play the guitar. That's what I do. So a lot of my earlier pieces were just kind of like instrumental things. I was into like Steve Vai blew my mind. I couldn't play anywhere near as good, obviously, but that kind of thing was like one of the first records where I was like, oh, you don't have to put lyrics and vocals to things. And obviously Steve Vai had that Zeppelin effect, like Passion and Warfare. It's like, what is this? Who is this guy? He's from another world. So yeah, I started the guitar very early on. I didn't start doing vocals until I started recording. That would have been like 10th grade. And by, I guess it was 1996, I started recording the Join the Cult Skitzo Calypso record, which is terrible. But that's not the point. The point is that's when I started singing because like necessity is the mother of invention. I'm just going to get out there and do the thing.
What made you take the leap?
Like I said, I just didn't want other people singing songs about suicide or heartbreak or those kind of things when they're my sentiments. It's kind of weird, right? Like, hey man, I was having this feeling the other day. Would you like to sing about it? No, this is going to do that.
But I almost mean like when did you feel like writing lyrics and like expressing yourself that way? Like what made you want to do that?
Okay, so I started doing that that might have actually preceded even now, wouldn't have preceded the guitar, but I guess proficiency at the guitar. I've been writing lyrics, I think, from a very early age, poetry lyrics. I remember having this really thick binder, and I would go out to eat with my mom like every Wednesday, and I would like present my works and be like, "Mom, what do you think?" And we're having waffles, and she's like, "This is disturbing, son. Like, are you okay?" I'm like, "Well, I'm listening to a lot of Metallica and Iron Maiden, and so naturally, just things were just dark, and it just felt right. It just made sense because I guess that's how I felt. I don't think I realized that I felt that way, but that's what connected with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you haven't looked back since 10th grade. It's just been kind of progressing forward. Like, Okay. Have you put a lot of energy? I know you said like in the beginning you felt like you couldn't sing. Like, have you put a lot of energy just like guitar into like working on your vocals, like spending time learning how to use the instrument?
Yeah, I think that like a lot of people, I figured like I always thought singing was just something you could do or couldn't do, not that you could work towards doing. And at a certain point in like 2002 or 3, I was like, I was starting to see people that were performing live, and I was just like, I had a really great stage show. I was a really good front man, but like I wasn't holding it down vocally because it was what I was doing was more punk rock. So it didn't lend itself to like anything like I don't know, like a Zeppelin type vocal line. And so I started figuring like, well, what can I do? How can I get better? And I reached out to this guy, Steve Whiteman from Kicks, and he basically got me in there. I was running scales and doing all the exercises for a couple months. And then finally he just kind of stopped me and he's like, Brad, you can sing fine. It's like he's like, I'll just do it in his voice because this is the way he is. But he was like, you just got no damn confidence, Brad. You got to just get up there and do it. And I was like, you're right. It's because like if I was falling flat, it would be because I was hesitating. I was like afraid of not hitting the note, and then I would not hit the note or whatever. And so once I got over that hurdle and realized it was nothing mechanical, or maybe the way I hear things, I was like, I was kind of set free at that point. And then it just was a matter of like strengthening my voice. And then it got to the point I heard a radio interview by Jimmy from Jimmy's Chicken Shack, and he was talking about how because he has a very powerful, like forceful voice. And he was just like, you know, the first couple shows are rough because your vocal folds aren't like calloused over yet. And that was the light bulb. And I was like, okay, so if I work at this and kind of push myself past that point where it feels wrong almost, I might start developing that voice that is that special thing I was talking about earlier. And I did. And I started getting to this point where we were doing just these big rock and roll bangers that nobody really tackles. And more confidence that I didn't have started to envelop, and then started just doing all kinds of wacky things. You know, I was really into Michael Patton, you know, like Mike Patton did everything. And so when I started hearing like, oh, well, I could do this or I could do that, it just opened everything up. And having that confidence to sing was a catalyst.
Okay. Was that like during that 10th to 12th grade era? Like when you were doing that, or was that before you moved to LA that you were doing that stuff with him?
No, it was after I got back. We'd already been playing live for a couple years at that point.
Okay.
So we were playing live from well, before I was originally I was doing like, you know, the acoustic thing at like open mics. But about 2000 to 2004 before 2004 was like, get your act together, Brad, you know, and that's tough because then you do get better and you start looking back at these old videos and you're just like, oh, you know, like,
It happens to everybody, man.
and it's funny because like I'll run into people and like they know you from certain eras, and then like so the heavy punk guys they don't understand this version, and you know these people wouldn't understand that version. So like now I'm doing a lot of acoustic blues and that kind of thing, and it's just totally different.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, so like the arc of your career so far, like the different iterations of Brad.
Yeah.
Like, so like in the beginning, you're saying that's like the punk rock Brad. And then as you kind of progressed, you got a little bit more hip to stuff. So it opened up your doors to like different ways that you can approach music. So like after the punk rock phase, that's when you're kind of in your Zeppelin-y, kind of like, I'm going to go for it phase.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then after that, is the next phase like what you're in now? Do you feel like, or do we skip over your EDM phase? Like,
there was an EDM phase.
Oh, really? Okay.
So you were saying that you kind of skipped over the 80s, and I have to be honest, like the 90s, like it was that cusp, right? So if you were 47, bands like Faith No More and Guns probably would have resonated with you because you would have been when it happened. But Nirvana was huge. It was huge for all of us. And it was something about Nirvana Bleach that made me realize, and even in other punk records too, like Bollocks and stuff like that. Like, well, I can't do that, but I could do this. And so Yes, there was the punk rock phase, and then my drummer went off to University of Delaware, and so I didn't have a drummer, so I started doing program music and then playing to that. So I guess that would be the EDM phase.
Nice.
And I was in jazz improv in high school, so I would just throw in these wacky things. Like it would be a record that was like all this doom and gloom goth stuff, and at the very end would be this funky, like I don't just some goofy like funk song, like for no reason at all, but to make people think like, what the hell is going on with this guy? I just enjoyed that
Yeah.
the surprise element. So
Okay.
yeah, and then it just progressed. So right now I'm kind of fighting between like if I have a band, it's almost proggy, but if I don't have a band, it's 90% of the time it's just rhythm and blues acoustic.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about the jazz thing, because so you have a lot of different influences, I guess. So how deep did you get in the weeds with like listening to like straight ahead or fusion or whatever? Like, what were you listening to?
I wasn't really. It was just basically whatever Mr. Charnetska put in front of us is what we played.
Okay. Okay.
And there was bands like Faith No More that would like every once in a while, like on their record, they would just do like there's a song called Evidence on King for a Day, and it's like a jazz song. I was like, what is this? But I thought it was so comically self-aware, and they were so in on the joke that I was like, I want to do stuff like that too. Like that Zappa territory where you're just like, I'm gonna make these people wonder, I'm not gonna be defined, that kind of thing. So I didn't really get in the weeds with jazz music, but I still enjoyed writing it. I understood enough theory that I could put songs together, So
I feel like that was the Vince way too, man. Like,
yeah,
cause
well, I was just gonna
yeah,
say that.
yeah,
It would be like, hey, that would sound really good with distortion if it was a seventh or a ninth chord or something like that.
yeah. I mean, he was always. I only studied with him for 2 years, but I had a really good rapport with him, and as I'm sure a lot of people do, because he's great. But like, as soon as we got to like the circle of fifths and we started getting a little bit more, into the depth of theory, my brain like wanted to shut it off, because I was like, that's not what I want to do. I want to play this Pearl Jam tune. That's like, you know what I mean? And I think he put up with me long enough with that stuff. But I feel like that was what was special about him. And as far as him being my first foray into guitar, is that, all right, these are the things you can play. You have the skills to do this stuff. Let me kind of massage that. But dude, you got to know this stuff if you want to take it further.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of young kids these days, like if you're trying to teach somebody, that can be a hard speed bump to hit. Because you don't feel like you need it as a guitarist. Like you think you can kind of get on a bandstand and do whatever you want, which is true to an extent.
Until it's not.
Right. I mean, I am a big fan of theory. I don't overuse it. I don't think about it when I'm on stage, but like it's a tool in the tool belt. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's great about what Vince, probably gave both of us, is like options. You know
All
what
right.
I mean?
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I have two trivia questions for you about Vince Corson.
Okay.
Number one, what was his band called?
Wasn't it like Car Full of Bobs or something like that?
It might have been, but he had a band called Raw Meat.
I don't remember that.
Okay, there was Raw Meat, and then he had a specific artist when he was trying to sell the idea of using these jazz chords. As a matter of fact, I did use jazz chords on Join the Call, but with distortion. But he had a favorite artist that he would always reference and talk about, like it was his favorite artist.
To think. I mean, you gotta remember, for me, this was 6th and 7th grade that I studied with him.
Okay. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. I mean, I remember him talking a decent amount about Jeff Beck.
Okay.
To me, but not much more than that. But you know what he did teach me that was like super important? And this, he used to say this all the time. So like he would teach me, okay, here's the pentatonic scale, right? Let's noodle on this box. And I'd be trying to learn how to improvise, and I'd be putting together melodies crappily. And then he was like, all right, now you play rhythm. And I would play. And then inevitably my guitar would be louder than his. And he's like, Mark, it's not the Mark show now. You got to learn how to step back. You got to learn how to play behind the, like, whoever's improvising. And that stuck with me hardcore, because it's like if you can't learn how to support a soloist, like what's the point? And so there's little things that Vince did and little things he said that to this day, like, are still in me, like definitely in the thread.
I was talking to this guy at the shop yesterday, and I said, the thing about Vince is he's a great guitar teacher, but he's also a great therapist. Because we would talk about everything. He would just like, we would spend 30 minutes. We would talk about like my girlfriend or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, the problem is, Brad, you can't chase. You can't be, if you're chasing them, they're going to run, man. Just stuff like that. Just like advice that just stuck with me. I was like, he's right.
Yeah. He was a bit of a Yoda in that way. I remember that.
Yoda.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, I haven't been to Musicland in a while, but the one time I was there, I went with my nephew who wanted to learn how to play guitar. So he was like, "Can you help me pick out a guitar?" And like, he was in high school, he was driving. So I went with him, and then here he comes walking through, and I was like, "Vince," and he turned around and he recognized me, and I was like, I don't know how that dude recognized me because I hadn't seen him in 2 decades.
The man has not aged since I was 8 years old.
He might be a vampire.
He might be.
It's very possible. All right, so tell me, because I remember hearing the name Skitzo Calypso around town. My band was in the jam band scene, so we were not in the same scenes. But I remember hearing that name, like that's a rad name. So like, when did that band start?
I guess officially in 1998. I guess I was recording what would be the Skitzo Calypso record right after I got back from Los Angeles. 1996. I started going to this place called the Time Machine Starship in Jarrettsville. It was with David Pace. He's a local luthier. You might know him. Mm-hmm. And he had a studio there, and then he moved to Main Street, and it was the 12th Planet recording studio. And these songs were cut like in a lot of ways they were live. So basically, it was $40 an hour. Each song was about budgeted for 2 hours because I was a pizza delivery guy. And you'd go in there and you'd cut the rhythm live with the drummer, and then you would do your overdubs as quickly as you could. And going back to the singing was like, as long as I put a vocal there, I was fine. Like whatever. That wasn't what I was focused on. But that's really when it all started. So 1998 would be the official launch of Join the Cult.
Okay. And how long was the span of that band before you might have disbanded and done some different things? And because I know you guys are kind of working together again.
Yeah.
So like, what was the like topography of that?
So there was a band that formed around 2001. This friend of mine's friend died. So there was 5 albums, like 5 solo albums before there was ever a band. My friend's friend died. He was a big fan of those records, and they wanted to do a benefit show. So we started just kind of going around the room like, could you play drums? Could you play bass? Could you play guitar? And we were able to form a band. We did like 6 or 7 shows together as that lineup, and it immediately fizzled out because it was like, again, the necessity is the mother of invention. We just had to do the show, and we kept it going for a little bit. And then I met these guys, the Holmes brothers, back in 2001 or 2-ish. And that became what people know was the core members, me, Brian, and Gary. And we did that. Oh my God. It was absolute insanity from about 2002 until about 2010. And then it sputtered out till about 2014. And then We Love the Underground took off. And when We Love the Underground took off, Skitzo kind of disappeared for a while. But at that point, there was already 12 or 13 albums out there. Like, we had ran the course with that band, and we had hit the glass ceiling. Like, there was only so much more we could do with it. And then around 2018, after Underground kind of did its thing for about 4.5 years, and that was a pretty successful band in the area, Skitzo reunited for a good run of shows. And we really enjoyed that because we did a whole EP and just went out there and tried to do it the right way. And now it's 2025 and we're like, Lisa, I'm getting the band back together.
That's fun though, man. I mean, it's got to be good. Like, when you get back with like old friends, it's kind of different than it's just like putting a new thing together. Right. There's already like an established magic. Are you having fun like doing this again? Like, are you like really enjoying the creative process with it?
It's an absolute blast because it's so off brand what we're doing that it's on brand again. So The music itself, if you've listened to any of it, it is acoustic driven, which is not what people think of when they think of Skitzo Calypso. It's some of it sounds like even like Kansas, like it's
Oh
like
wow, okay.
So a lot of the songs we've done recently are very earthy, but a lot of harmonies, and it's just not the upbeat, punkier kind of thing. So people are probably like, what are they doing now? What is this? And we're getting a kick out of it. But we just I went to the studio last night to start cutting a new track, and it's more in line with what we think, what people would expect, because that's fun to kind of go veer off. But I love doing the upbeat punk tunes. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw that post. You said it's heavy.
yeah,
Quotes.
it's as heavy as a 47-year-old's gonna get.
The dad rock heavy. I know all about that.
There's a playlist. It's called Divorce Dad Rock, songs that make you want to grill in your New Balances. That's the name of the playlist. And we got one of our songs onto it, and this song, I swear, I'm sitting there in Myrtle Beach, I'm smoking a cigar, and Gary calls me. This was the first song that we released when we came back in 2024, and he's like, dude, did you look at the numbers? I'm like, nah, man. He's like, how many plays do you think we got yesterday? I was like, I don't know, 50. He's like, more. I was like, 100. He's like, more. 200. A lot more. I was like, a lot more, because we do it all organically. Like, we're not paying for streams.
Right.
Well, it ended up being like 1,200.
That's awesome, man.
It was really cool, and it was just the reception to that. We're thinking we're going to put this out, and we're going to either alienate everybody, or they're going to be kind of like, this is cool. Like, I didn't know they could do that.
Well, yeah. Don't you hope? Like, I guess the hope is that these people like you grow with you. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, there's like the kind of blinder mentality of this band should be doing this for their whole career. I think
The
makes it,
AC/DC thing.
yeah, that's what makes it kind of fizzle out, and that's what makes people not interested anymore and go to the bathroom when you play songs off the new record. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's cool, man. Let's talk about, because we talked a little bit about this before, but about Mouthful of Graffiti podcast that you started.
Yep.
And same thing, kind of like out of necessity, pandemic hits. What do you do? So, like, what were you doing leading up to the pandemic, like a month before?
Well, I was drinking a lot,
Okay.
and we started doing. I was working on, I think my second, or I just finished my second book. So we started like doing this thing called Drinking with Authors. It was similar to this, except it was just kind of like it wasn't a podcast. It was just, we would just like fire this thing up at night because of COVID, and we would just drink and talk. And that's kind of what was going on at the time. Leading up to COVID, I think I was doing, I started really getting into Veteran Avenue was probably about like 10, 15 songs deep at that point. That project, if you're not familiar with it, is basically, the idea was to take all these different people that I'd played with over my long stint playing music, and put them all in one place, but also to bring in a lot of musicians who I'd never played with that I respected and wanted to play with. So the first album, Dissonance and Discord, it's got 24 local musicians on it. Basically, I would write the songs, and I'd be like, you know what? You're a really great blues player. You should play the solo in this song. Or you're a really great swing type drummer, like Todd Boyle would be perfect for this particular song. Or and I just started kind of forming bands around these songs. And so that project was really cool. And that was probably what was taking a lot of my focus after Underground broke up between like 2018 and COVID. And then I was writing the second book in there. If you're not
tell
familiar
people more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Children of the Program series started when I was laid off from Patch.com. I was a journalism major at Towson. I always wanted to write. I always wrote blogs. As I said in the beginning, I was always writing lyrics or poetry. And what I wanted to do with the book was take all these album themes and put them all into one spot and like try to figure out like what were the themes and how can I write a story that it intertwines those themes with the lyrics and the song titles and just make it this big thing. And it started off almost autobiographical, and then it just went crazy into all these weird places. But like in the book, there's this cult that's trying to kill this other group of people. And so the first album's called Join the Cult, so you kind of get the connection there. And the first book, I say it's kind of like it's a virgin effort. It's just like the first album. You have to go there to get there or whatever. But by the second book, I was like, okay, now I'm honing my skills here. Now I'm getting good at the writing thing. And then by the third book, like that's like my masterpiece. I love it.
Nice, dude. That's great. That's fun. I mean, it's nice to have, like, you're a Renaissance man, you know, you got a lot going on there.
Thank you.
And like you said, like you have to stay busy. Like as soon as COVID hit, like, what am I gonna do? I gotta stay busy, because your brain is probably constantly firing like me. I mean, I don't know about you, I have ADHD, so it's constantly like, hey, let's do this project. Hey, let's do this project. You know, it's like maracas everywhere on either side of my head.
Exactly it.
Constantly. Yeah. But it's the interesting part, like what you just said about first, second, third book. It's same thing with music, right? Same thing with like when you started singing and everything and writing songs. And I feel the same way. It's like, it's fertilizer, right? So it's like, you got to write a bunch of shit before you're going to grow something beautiful. And that's just a fact of life. And that's artistry, period, for every artist. Right. Nobody comes out of the womb and is just Picasso like immediately. It's got to grow, right? It's got to evolve. It's got to become something in front of you that you realize, okay, I love this. I'm going to cherish this, but I can do better constantly, you know? And it's to this day. I mean, do you feel that way too? Like it's just constantly like, I gotta do better. I gotta do better.
So I think one of the things, I guess the positive things, not to get too Freudian, but like, I think one of the positive things that came from the fact that my father never really wanted to support the music because of his faith. He felt like, I think, supporting the music was condoning this rock and roll lifestyle, which was inevitably going to lead me to hell. I think that it kind of created a sense that nothing I did was going to be good enough. And I think also dealing with the fact that they got separated at a very early age, I had that same sense anyway, because my mom wasn't around. And my mom was very into her own life, and she was very disconnected. And so I had a situation where I just felt like you could never really please either of them for different reasons. But the one piece of connective tissue was the music. And I think that's where the fire to do music started. And I don't think it can be quenched, because I don't ever think that anything I do is good enough, ever. And some people might be like, well, if that's not good enough, then I don't know, but that's how I feel. But I've also been around people who've always had that like really tight network, that family network, where they've always felt confident. They've always had that support. And I think in some ways, maybe it's to their disadvantage, because they don't really feel like that need to like prove anything to anybody, including themselves.
Yeah. That makes sense to me, man. It's almost like, yeah, well, no, it's, dude, I'm right there with you. I feel like there's a place for, I think there's a place for both of it, but the struggle is definitely kind of what makes us kind of continue to want to be stronger and to want to like accomplish something. And, you know, maybe some people to their detriment, you know, but I mean, like, look at you, like, look at what you've accomplished and look at what you've done. And like, I'm sure at this point, you know, it's for you. It's not for anybody else. It's for what feeds you. And I think having that clarity and like what you just kind of said, like understanding where you're coming from is the healing process, right? And that's what makes everything worth it, in my opinion. So it's tough, man. Trust me, dude. Like the older we get, I had a physical yesterday and I was talking to my doctor about, she's like, how are you doing? How's your mental health? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, but like, it's like, you know, I've put work in to like work on things, and it's important. And I think it's, you know, for me, exercising is a huge part of that. And I know for you too, probably like keeping up that pace of like working out every week and keeping your body moving is what a large part of the battle is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the eating healthy. I I don't know if you see, I'm constantly running. It's
Mhm.
partially to run off the anxiety, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely very important.
Oh, trust me, dude. I'm like, get my blood results back, and she's like, your cholesterol's getting a little bit over the line. I'm like, God damn it! Like, here we go,
Right.
here we go.
Well, they start you with the blood pressure pills, and then it's the cholesterol. Like, what are they called? Statins or whatever. I'm only on the blood pressure pills right now, and I'm at the very lowest level of a blood pressure pill you can take because it's genetic. It's not
Yeah,
a health thing.
totally, dude.
But we're definitely in that point where now that you bring it up, I don't remember until I was about 42 or 43 where they would ask me at the physical about your mental health. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but now that you say it, I remember they asked that, and I was like, that is something you have to work at because I quit drinking 4.5 years ago.
That's
And
awesome, dude.
so it just, and that was partly for the mental health because that ADHD kind of thing, it's less manageable as you get older because you can't do it as quickly.
Yeah,
So, um, yeah,
it's
I
like standing in a room full of amplifiers that are just blasting. Do
right.
you know what I mean? That's what it feels like sometimes. It's just like overwhelming the amount of thoughts and the amount of like information that is running through your cranium. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's a weird feeling.
I think
Um,
are we pushing ourselves as people too far at this point?
oh yeah.
What is all this?
Dude, you know it's crazy, and we could go down a whole rabbit hole with this, but like I think like a month ago, Brad, I went down a rabbit hole of on YouTube of like near death experiences. And it was kind of strange because like all of these different people, even though they were saying different things, they were communicating the same thing. And I find it fascinating because I am not religious. Like I fell out of that wagon a long time ago. I'm the black sheep of my family in that way.
Woo!
But like I'm fascinated by like near death experiences and about like where does our energy go when we die? I mean, there's energy and electricity. Where the hell does it go? Like,
Or where did it start? Because obviously, whatever's makes Mark has existed for as long as this universe has been here.
yeah,
So it started as something in the very, very beginning, 6 billion years ago, whatever it is, and now it's sitting here interviewing me.
dude, it's so strange. But no, that's what the people were saying. They were like, it's like almost in a sense of past lives in a
Mhm.
way. And I just found it very, very interesting. But coming off of what we were just talking about mental health, there is like I found a peace in it in a way. Like because when I lost my dad, that hit me pretty hard. And
Okay.
it's like, he was like everything to me, like in
Was
terms
it
of
like unresolved issues there, or that made it harder, or
no, I just miss him.
yeah,
Like he was not a musician, but he watched every single podcast the next day, and he was like, I have no clue what the hell you were talking about, but it was very interesting. He's like that kind of guy, but he was like my biggest fan. So I just missed talking to him. But there was some sort of peace that came over me, like when I was hearing all these people tell their stories.
yeah.
And not that I'm afraid of death, but I mean, like, let's be real, we're halfway through it, buddy. And it's if we're lucky. And it's weird to think about that, but it's also there's like a piece that's like, well, it's gonna be all right,
Because you know what? At this point, I could say I've been very blessed. I've had a great life. And if it all ended tomorrow, I
Mhm.
remember this one core memory that's very weird. I don't know. I was like 3 or 4 years old, and they say you can't remember that, but I remember it very clearly. I was sitting in my bed holding this little white stuffed cat, and I'd never really been to church at this point because my father's thing really didn't start until I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. It was a couple years later, but I remember sitting there and cussing out a God that I didn't know existed.
Whoa.
And I was really pissed off that I was here.
Mm.
And then I don't know, like I don't see why there wouldn't be reincarnation. If these are just vehicles, where obviously we entered the vehicle somehow and we chose to, or something chose it for us. I don't know, but
It's crazy, right? It's really weird to think about, man. But if that is true, if there is reincarnation, I hope I come back like my dog and live in the friggin' life.
You know, they're smart. Like they probably can talk, but they know if they talked, we'd give them responsibility.
Take your damn self out. Go for a walk. Oh my god.
That's right.
Hey, before we run out of time, I wanted to chat with you. So the Mouthful of Graffiti podcast.
Yes.
Because you have a couple different things that you're doing with it in a way. So you're doing the recorded audio version, but you're also doing this thing at Reb Records. Like, tell me about what's going on with all these different things, like iterations of this podcast.
So the live version is kind of it's kind of slowed down like the regular week. I was doing like weekly, like every Saturday or Sunday, we would do the Mouthful. We'd get down to the basement and do this kind of thing. And then the guys at the shop are like, have you ever thought about bringing the podcast out? I was like, I have. At one point I was going to just set up in the shop and do the podcast there with nobody watching, just to be in that atmosphere. And they're like, well, and me and Jason Shalou got together and we just kind of figured out what would the format be. So we've kind of made it into like a little Tonight Show. So there's 3 artists. They come in, they interview for 10, 15 minutes. And then they go do their 20-minute set. We record all of it. And then we rinse and repeat 2 more times. And then I get all the files at the end and put it into like just a seamless kind of episode. But it's been very well received. And just super excited. We got the 1-year anniversary coming up next month. We got Jimmy Haha from Jimmy's Chicken Shack. And, you know, he's doing it to support the show. I mean, it's really super cool that he's doing it. I told him, I was like, we don't have a lot of money to offer you, you know, but we would really love to have you. And he was like, you know what? I'm in. Let's do it. So
that's awesome. He's
going to do that. And then this other girl, she's up and coming, extremely talented. Her name's Calum. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her.
No, I'm not familiar with.
But she's about to be on American Idol, and just it's going to be, well, there's only 75 seats available, so it's going to sell out very quickly. And after that, I may kind of slow it down on the live front for a while just to get back into the routine of doing regular episodes, because I don't know. I just don't have enough time or bandwidth to do the live show and then 2 or 3 more weeks of episodes back to back to back.
Yeah.
And try to do the music, because I'm doing music too. And it's a lot going on. And then I work in events at the college. So this past week Saturday we had Mutt's Gone Nuts, the previous Saturday, and that was sold out. Then we had the Harlem Globetrotters, and that was nearly sold out. Then we had Taylor Dane and Tiffany, and that wasn't sold out, but that was a lot of work. And then after that we had Lamb Chop. So there's a lot of things going on, and it's that, like you were saying, that amplifier feeling where it's just like, it's just too much information. So
do you ever get to a place where you're just like, I'm too overwhelmed, I need to stop and go for a run right now? Does that ever happen to you?
Absolutely. The one I'm on the Bel Air Downtown Alliance as well, so that's like another like thing.
you got a lot going on, Brad.
I know. And so it can become that. And I go for lots of runs.
Yeah. So is the university gig, like, are you there 5 days a week? Are you there? Do you have to be there 6 days a week? Like, how busy is that?
So I was off yesterday, but I had worked at that point like 14 days straight. It was a lot. And yeah, so I'm there 9 to 5, but then if there's an event in the evening, like the Harlem Globetrotters, I'm there from like 9 to 10:30 cleaning up. Taylor Dane, that particular show, I would have came in at like 2:30 and then worked till like 11:30, and that's on a Saturday. Lamb Chop, you're coming in, you're doing like a 5 or 6 hour bit, but yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah, man. You have a lot of hours in your day spent for you already when you wake up in the morning. It's like spoken for.
Well, and then there's also like, even if there's nothing to do, that actually makes it worse, because then you realize all the things you haven't been doing that you got to catch up on. Like, I haven't been going to the gym. That's something that hasn't been happening. So then now that's added to the calendar. Or you got this. So that week that I just described, like, it was insane. And then last night, or actually the night before, Sunday night, I was like, I'm going to the studio Monday night and I don't have a song written. I should probably do that. So,
Oh wow, okay, man.
I mean, I had ideas and I was like, that's going to be the idea. And I'm going to start fleshing that out. And I started writing guitar leads and like structuring it out. And it's just like, I'm just tired.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
I find that premise interesting, like going into a studio without any music. Or do you find that when you freshly write something, do you feel like it's better to capture that as soon as you possibly can, like as immediate, or do you feel like it loses the vibe? Like if you wait too long, you sit too long on it, you beat it to death, like what's your thought on that?
My thought is exactly that. I think that like the newest song is usually the one that I'll go record. Like I'll probably write 20, 30 songs before I get to the studio again. But it's usually one of the most recent ones gets picked. It's not the one that I guess wrote 3 months ago, even though that might be a really good song. This particular instance is different though. This song, I did write it about 2 or 3 years ago, and I just always loved it, and we just never did it.
Oh, okay.
So,
do you have to get yourself into that space, that headspace to sing it again? Like, you know what I mean? Like if you wrote something 2 years ago, like where does that emotional fortitude come from?
I don't think this one goes away because my wife was in a really bad car accident a bunch of years ago. Like car flipped over, just completely demolished.
Oh my God.
It was horrible. And somehow she walked away from it relatively unscathed. But we went to TGI Fridays shortly after, and I remember walking in, and we're all both kind of still in shock from the whole thing. And there was an old man just sitting there having his lunch or dinner by himself, and I just thought that could be me, like tomorrow or or right now or whatever. So I wrote a song about that, and I don't think that those sentiments necessarily go away. And this is like I said, it's an upbeat, punkier song, but it's just about this. It's like that the dog in the room with the fire all around him, and it's like
it's fine.
It's fine. So it's like a very sarcastic kind of thing. So no, the feeling didn't go away.
Yeah. It's always an interesting, thought, because I think a lot of people don't understand that if they don't understand the craft of what you do, and trying to put yourself back in that place after you wrote it 5 years ago or whatever. Sometimes I feel like that could be a cool exercise in freshening up, polishing a turd in a way. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, why didn't I record that? Like, wasn't happy with that bridge,
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be. Like, do you find that happens too?
So speaking of that, we went back in 2022 and we started re-recording Join the Cult because I wanted to see what it would sound like now with the talent that we have now and the technology that we have now. So like these are songs that sounded like Pretty Vacant on like Nevermind the Bollocks. Like they're just raw punk tunes. And now they just sound like these like really big punk tunes. And it was really cool to go back. And I didn't feel like the saltiness in some of the songs had really gone away. I still felt that. So yeah, I think
amazing.
Still there.
That's awesome. Did you grow up on like Minor Threat and Fugazi and Bad Brains and stuff too? Like, did you listen to all that stuff?
Fugazi, Sex Pistols, and usually if you had this kind of stuff or even had heard of this stuff, it obviously wasn't because of terrestrial radio. It was like some kid slipped you a cassette at the skate park. But yeah, definitely into those tunes.
Yeah, there's this whole, I don't know. I mean, like some of the people, like when we think about like Dave Grohl and some of those, like, and like even Eddie Vedder and some of those cats, like who loved punk rock. And Pearl Jam those are my guys. I mean, I have a Pearl Jam tattoo. Like that's why I play guitar. And
great band.
Yeah. And I think they got a lot of crap because of the commercial success that they achieved so quickly. And because they kind of like stuck out from Alice in Chains and Soundgarden because those guys were all into the Beatles and the Who. Like it's like they weren't listening to punk rock as much as maybe those other bands. But when you think about like that Seattle scene, bands like Nirvana and like Alice in Chains and Mother Love Bone and Mudhoney and all those bands,
yeah,
that was stemming from the Ramones. That was stemming from like New York punk music. And I think that there's even today, I think I can see that coming back around. Like I see a lot of younger musicians talking about the Ramones or talking about, I mean, you name like the Germs, like any band, whether it was West Coast, whether it was East Coast punk rock bands, but there is like this resurgence of the rawness, the energy, I guess,
Well, I
that
think that's what
encompass
people
that.
want. I think they want to get back to organic. And so you're seeing like a hell of a resurgence in folk and blues, like stripped down, literally releasing recordings that they recorded with like their phone in their bedroom kind of thing. And they sound killer. And it's just, I think people want something that feels real at this point. Like we're all getting tired of like the overproduced stuff, you know?
Yep.
So I think that I think I started leaning towards that with the rhythm and blues kind of stuff too, because it was just like I'm a songwriter at the core, you know, so I want people to value like the effort that goes into writing those sentiments that are hard to say.
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful.
yeah.
All right. So let's do this. Let's go and do the
Oh, rapid fire.
lightning round get down. Believe it or not, it's almost been an hour, buddy. So what I'm gonna do is put on a metronome at 112 BPM cruising altitude just for some suspense.
Okay.
And
No pressure.
I'm gonna ask you 10 questions. So it's like a this or that thing, Brad. So you can tell, if you want to explain your answers, feel free. I love explanations. You do not have to do that. That is not a mandatory requirement of you. The first one is always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
Lennon.
Acoustic or electric?
Acoustic.
Old Bay chips or Old Bay goldfish?
Oh, chips.
Okay.
I didn't even know they did Old Bay goldfish.
They're hella good, dude.
All right. Well, maybe my answer would be different.
I need to calm down on that, according to my doctor, apparently. So summer or winter Olympics?
Summer.
Okay. All right. You're on death row. Final meal. What do you eat for your final meal?
Crab cakes by the docks.
Oh, look at you. Straight. Like that's the most Maryland answer you could have given. Soundgarden or Tool?
Soundgarden.
Space or time travel?
Time travel.
Bagels or donuts?
Donuts.
Orioles or Ravens?
Ravens.
And okay, here's the last one, Brad. Sometimes this is the easiest, sometimes it's the hardest. If you could take one record, one album, doesn't have to be your favorite album of all time, but if you could take one record and erase it from your memory so you could go back and experience it for the first time again, what album would that be?
I'm not going to BS anybody. I mean, it would definitely be Appetite for Destruction.
Okay, tell me why. That's fine.
Okay, so we talked about Cinderella's Night Songs. We talked about Led Zeppelin 3 from Columbia House. But the kind of the amalgamation of those things, and with how angry I was as a youth, that record just knocked my socks off. I was like, it was punk rock, it was angry, it had those high vocals that made me think I want to know if can I do that? This is special. And I guess I say Appetite for sure, but I think what makes Appetite so cool is what happened after it. Then you appreciate Appetite even more, because what happened after it was like, wow, these guys really had a lot of talent. So it would be Appetite, because just hearing songs like It's So Easy for the first time and just being like, having somebody just yell F you
Right.
in the middle of a song, and he had these different like vocal stylings.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't confined to just like I'm going to sing high, I'm going to do it for 3.5 minutes, and that's going to be the song. So it was just the right thing, man. And then like and you probably have this too. Like I was just taken back by the artwork.
Yeah.
When you open up a cassette tape and you see, well, what's inside of there, a lot of questions come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, wow, what is this? I can see why my dad's thrown it away 10 times.
Right. So do you collect vinyl too now?
I do.
Okay. Because there's nothing like it. I know this is like the get off my lawn old man kind of thing, but like I missed for a long period of time before I bought another record player, which was only like I only probably bought that record player like 6 years ago. Like it wasn't too long ago, but I missed holding on to something and I missed reading about it because it's great. I love the age of digital. I love the fact that I have Apple Music that I can just go in my car and I can put on, I can make a playlist of all this new stuff I've never heard and drive to the beach. You know what I mean? But there's something about reading, like who produced this record? Who played on this record?
And who are they?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And there's just like a depth of, the rapport and the relationship you have with the music that it's not there with the digital age. And I think, people are even buying CDs again now. It's kind of funny.
It is.
But I mean, we grew up with that stuff. Do you remember when CDs first came out, how they were in that big ass, like cardboard box?
Yes.
It was like, what was your first CD you bought?
Oh, I don't know. It was probably like I don't remember. You know what? No, I do. It was probably either Nirvana, Nevermind, or it was Alice in Chains' Dirt. Although I feel like I had them on cassette.
Yeah.
But I was so into that music, and CDs weren't too far behind. I probably would have bought it again.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh no, I'm having another core memory moment. No, I think it was Kix's Hot Fuzz or Hot Fuss or no, Hot Wire. Kix Hot Wire.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about like just remembering going to record and tape traders in Bel Air, and it's like I miss that so much.
And being judged by the guy at the counter.
Yeah. Totally, dude. I mean, you would kind of go in there ready, like I'm going to buy this CD. If this motherfucker says anything about this, like I got it in the chamber. I'm ready to what to say. But man,
just put it in the bag.
Just right. Yeah. And like remember, like you could go there and you could buy concert tickets. Like I miss that. I mean, I love Reb. That's like the closest like record store to me. Like I feel like nowhere. I'm in Moncton. Like there's no like other area that's closer than Bel Air probably to get to buy records, but they usually have a great selection of stuff. So
they do.
I found a first pressing of used of Robert Palmer's Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley, and I was like, why the hell didn't anyone buy this? Yeah, I was like, holy shit, like grab that. So it's just funny, like you never know what you're gonna find when you roll up into a record store. It's great.
Can I ask you a question about just a random question about Pearl Jam?
Sure.
So after Vitology, you obviously stayed a core fan up until now. Mm-hmm. Were there records in there that are maybe overlooked that are worth going back to?
I mean, yeah. I think people fell off the wagon and didn't really understand what was going on with No Code. You would love No Code. You should listen to No Code. That's the next record after Vitology.
But I think I did actually listen to that one. I think that still passed the test for me. And then it wasn't that I didn't like the band. It was just I wasn't as into it.
Yeah. I will tell you, my favorite Pearl Jam record of all time is the next record, Yield, that came out in 98.
Okay.
That album from start to finish is a masterpiece. And that, to me, that record is quintessential Pearl Jam. And I know people think quintessential Pearl Jam is 10 and Versus. I disagree. I feel like they came into this really cool moment in their, musician prowess. Jack Irons was on that record playing drums, and his groove and the way that he hits a snare drum is my favorite drummer of all the Pearl Jam records. And his drums sound different from record to record or from song to song, which is very interesting. Like even the way, like if you listen to the opening tune, which is called Brain of Jay, it is super punk rock. And then when you go into something like the song Faithful, that's more, it's more tender, but aggressive. Like there's a soft moment in the song and then it just ramps up and ramps up. But Jeff Ament is one of the greatest bass players in rock and roll history, and he doesn't get enough love. Like he is the McCartney of that era of those people, in my opinion. So listen to Yield.
Yield.
I was just listening. I was cranking it when I was running out this morning. I was listening. I mean, I constantly listen to that album still. So
They had a single or two off there, correct?
yeah. So Do the Evolution was that heavy punk rock thing that had that anime video.
Okay.
That's a crazy tune. I don't know if Given to Fly was I think that was the other hit off of that. But I mean, you got to think that was the part of their career when they were really escaping the limelight. They were not doing press. They were touring out of their own vans. Like Eddie Vedder wasn't even like touring with the band. Like he was driving a van doing a radio show from his van. Like he was, they were not, and they almost broke up. That was the era of the Pearl Jam history where they almost broke up. And they talk about it all the time, but like there's something very special about that record. So.
I don't know if you know this. We were talking about Fugazi, but do you know that they did a cover of "I'm So Tired"?
No.
Yeah, they did.
The Beatles tune?
No. The Fugazi tune, "I'm So Tired."
Oh, Pearl Jam?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I knew. Yeah. Those guys. So that's the thing that I love about them too, is like they'll do that, but then they do "I Got a Feeling," you know, the Beatles tune. And it's like they love all that different music, which is what becomes the melting pot, right? Which is like you. It's like, you know, you have your punk phase, your EDM phase, now your blues phase, but you're still pouring it all together.
I would say if you get a chance, listen to Dissonance and Discord, that Veteran Avenue record, because that really is all of it in one spot. There's an EDM song on there too called "Cruel."
Okay.
So
did Todd play on that record? Was that the one he played on?
He did. He played on a song called "Dead Hour" with Brian Rumbly.
Okay, cool. I was in a cover band with Rumbly, Todd, and Maurer.
Nice.
In 2005. And we used to play at Secrets all the time, and that was like a fun time of memory of my life.
Dude,
is
there a better place to play, man? I mean, we played Morley Hall with Skid Row.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was cool. Because we were kids. I mean, we were early 20s, but we felt like kids, and it was a really weird thing happened that night. Not to take this too long, but like,
yeah, that's fine.
It was we played our set, and everybody's just getting hammered drunk because we're at the beach. We just we're about to play with, we just opened for Skid Row.
Early 20s or mid 20s? Like what era was that?
I think it was like mid 20s. And at one point, my drummer's uncle got into a fight with this guy at the bar. And while that's happening, I had gone around to the side of the stage, and they started playing a song, Youth Gone Wild. And the guitar player invited me on stage, and I got up on stage and I'm singing the choruses with him, and I'm having the night of my life. I get off stage and I realized that they were all so invested in this fight that was going on that they never saw it happen.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Dude, like playing down there is like the Wild West sometimes. I mean, I remember being 24 or 25 on that stage outside during Bike Week when we were playing, and we played right after Jim Long, who was like a staple at Secrets, and just all these women just flashing. And I'm like in my early 20s, like, what is going on? Like, and this is like fresh, you know, super innocent Mark. Like, I was just like, oh my God, is this what it's like?
This is amazing.
Yeah. But it's fun. And those guys are all great dudes too. So it's fun being with people that you like being around.
Well, I'd like to catch you play sometime.
Yeah, likewise, man. Yeah. We'll have to hook up sometime and stay in touch. You know, I'm gonna definitely try to at some point. I'd like to try to come, to one of those live shows at Reb and like hang out. So watch it, and yeah, it'd be a good time, man. But it's great to sit and actually talk to you and get to know each other. So
yeah, absolutely. This was a cool way to do it too.
Hell yeah, man. So for everybody that is watching, BradWilliamCox.com, if you want to check out everything that Brad's got going on. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, same thing I just said, BradWilliamCox.com. Go check that out. Anything else to plug?
Well, I got a couple shows coming up. March 14th, I will be down at Zen West as myself. March 24th, Manor Mill Tavern, also as myself. May 31st, I'm playing the Skitzo Calypso reunion show. Going back a month, April 17th down in DC. And then slowly kind of picking up shows here and there because that kind of really got put on the back burner for a while. So yeah,
Cool.
just staying busy.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. Well, it was amazing to talk to you, and thank you for taking the time with me. I super appreciate you doing that.
High five, man.
Cool. Everybody else, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we will see you next time.